With every super team comes high expectations and the pressure of winning a championship.
It is championship or bust.
But it's one thing not to win the title, and a whole other thing to fail miserably and not even reach the finals, or even make the playoffs.
Is this the biggest failure in NBA history?
These are the 10 most disappointing super teams in NBA history. Starting with the first super team ever, the 1969 LA Lakers. The 69 Lakers were the first super team not developed through the draft, when Wilt Chamberlain joined Jerry West and Elgin Baylor. Wilt was the best center in the NBA, West was the league's best shooting guard, and Elgin was the best small forward. In 1968, a year prior to Wilt's arrival, Chamberlain was the league MVP, Baylor finished third in the MVP voting, while Jerry made the second All-NBA team, averaging 26 points per game and leading the NBA in true shooting percentage. These three superstars joined forces because they were tired of losing to the Boston Celtics. Up to that point, Baylor had already lost in the NBA Finals 6 times. West was his teammate in 5 of those losses, while Wilt had 6 playoff losses to the C's.
It was the most disgusting personal period I've ever had in my life. I wanted to win a championship, and I really didn't think that that was ever going to happen.
So together, they were finally supposed to dethrone Boston and dominate the NBA for years. In 1969, the Lakers finished first in the West and got to the finals, where they took a 3-2 series lead against the omnipresent Boston, who were playing in their 12th finals in 13 years. Still, the Celtics countered in Game 6 and forced a Game 7 in Los Angeles. But because of the Celtics' age, the presence of Wilt Chamberlain, and home court advantage, the Lakers were confident that they were going to win Game 7. So much so that they filled the roof of their arena with balloons, which were set to be released after the Lakers won the championship. Well, once Bill Russell heard that, he got so mad and motivated to win Game 7 that the Lakers hardly had any chance.
They can't beat us. But it's going to be fun to watch them get those balloons out one at a time.
Boston held a 15-point lead in the fourth quarter, with Wilt on the bench nursing a bad knee. Somehow the Lakers managed to cut the lead to 2 points and could have won the game, but the Celtics held strong and those balloons never got released. After that season, Bill Russell retired, and the Lakers had a golden opportunity to finally win their first championship in Los Angeles. The Lakers made the finals once again and were the favorites against New York. But thanks to the miraculous return of Willis Reed, the Knicks pulled off a magical performance in Game 7, winning their first title, while the Lakers' superstar trio was once again left empty-handed. In 1971, the Lakers lost to Kareem's Bucks in the conference finals, and early in the 72 season, after just 9 games, Elgin Baylor decided to retire, unable to return to form after a tough knee injury. And then, even though they no longer had 3 superstars, the Lakers started winning games. LA finished the season with 69 wins and just 13 losses, an NBA record at the time, which included a 33-game win streak, a record that still stands today.
All of a sudden, this team started winning basketball games. 1 month went by, 2 months went by.
When you get to 17, 18, 19 wins, now people are saying like, wow, can they ever lose?
LA would go on to win the title against the Knicks, with Chamberlain winning the finals MVP.
The Lakers had won the NBA championship.
And even though Wilt and Jerry West eventually got the job done, the original super team with Baylor failed to win the title, which is why they had to be on this list. But this wasn't the only Lakers super team that fell short of expectations. In the summer of 2003, Karl Malone and Gary Payton landed in Los Angeles, joining an already stacked roster, led by Shaquille O'Neal and Kobe Bryant. Even though Malone and Payton were past their prime, Shaq and Kobe were still at their peak. And with 4 future Hall of Famers in the starting lineup, plus a Hall of Fame coach, everybody expected the Lakers to walk through the competition without breaking a sweat. But there was plenty of sweat, insults, and drama. The Shaq and Kobe feud reached an all-time high, with the two superstars literally wanting to kill each other at one point. On top of their fight, Kobe was also dealing with the court case that could have ruined his life and was missing games due to the trial. Gary Payton didn't fit in the triangle offense, Derek Fisher didn't get enough minutes, and the bench was woefully thin. Still, with all their talent, LA started the season with a 20-5 record. But then they lost Karl Malone, who missed the next 40 games due to a knee injury. However, with everybody healthy for the playoffs, the Lakers managed to get to the finals unscathed, and they were considered heavy favorites against the Detroit Pistons. But the Pistons were a brick wall. The best defensive and most physical team in the NBA shut down Shaq and Kobe. And when Karl Malone got injured in Game 3, it was all over, and the Lakers flamed out in 5 games.
On the Pistons thing, that's my fault because I didn't get us prepared to run our automatics. And we got to Detroit and it forced us to play our offense 94 feet and we weren't ready. And we couldn't do it. And everything just capitulated from there. And that sits with me because we should have won that easily.
After the season, Malone retired, Shaq got traded to Miami, while Peyton went to Boston, and the Lakers' four-superstar team imploded after only one season. However, it could be worse. Just ask the 2014 Brooklyn Nets. Their story started in 2010, when Russian billionaire Mikhail Prokhorov bought the team with big money and an even bigger appetite for winning. Without thinking of the future, Prokhorov and general manager Billy King quickly traded all of Brooklyn's draft picks. 2 first-round picks went to the Jazz for Deron Williams. Another first pick went to Portland for Gerald Wallace, which the Blazers used a year later to select Damian Lillard. Then, in 2012, when the team moved to Brooklyn, the Nets gave a first-rounder to the Hawks for Joe Johnson and his hefty contract. But the coup de grace of their short-sightedness, and one of the worst trades in NBA history, was made in 2013, when Billy King traded 3 first-round picks to Boston in exchange for the ancient Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce, and Jason Terry, whose combined age was over 100 years old.
I think we've got pieces now that we can compete for a championship, and that's our goal.
On paper, the Nets had 5 all-star starters, plus a formidable bench. But in reality, all their key players were on their last legs, namely Garnett, Pierce, and Deron Williams. Brooklyn won just 44 games in the regular season and advanced through 1 playoff series, barely, surviving a last-second shot from Kyle Lowry that could have won the series for Toronto. And then, in the second round, the Nets got dominated by LeBron James and the Heat. And just like that, it was all over.
You know, it didn't work out, and that's what everybody looks at, but I easily feel like it could have worked out just the same.
Pierce left for nothing in free agency. KG lasted for a half season more, while Deron Williams and Joe Johnson left after the 2015 season. Just 2 years after they assembled their super team, the Nets were left in shambles, with no stars and no draft picks. And just 8 years later, like they were Britney Spears because, oops, they did it again, just after they recovered from the Billy King fiasco and made the playoffs in 2019, the Nets acquired Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant in free agency, and immediately became a contender. Okay, not immediately, because KD missed the entire 2020 season due to an Achilles injury he sustained in the 2019 finals. But when he got healthy for the 2021 season, Durant was arguably even better than before. And so was Kyrie, who had the best shooting season of his career, joining the prestigious 50-40-90 club. And you know what's better than 2 superstars? 3. Even though the Nets had 2 juggernauts and a deep roster around them, they decided to sacrifice that depth for a 3rd star, trading for James Harden mid-season.
We didn't think we could beat the Nets at full power. That was a team that we thought we might not be able to get past for 3 or 4 years.
And despite the naysayers doubting that the 3 greatest ISO scorers in basketball could function as a team, somehow, the new Brooklyn Big Three made it work. With Harden on board, the Nets could constantly play with at least 1 superstar on the floor, and were absolutely unstoppable when all 3 played together, scoring 120 points per 100 possessions, which at the time was the greatest offense in NBA history. But the joyride lasted for only 16 games. Harden's hamstring and Irving's ankle injury reduced the Nets to just 1 superstar, and in the second round against the Bucks, it wasn't enough. Durant's buzzer beater that should have sent the Nets to the conference finals was a 2 rather than a 3, because KD's toes were on the line. And in the overtime of Game 7, Brooklyn had no gas left in the tank, and they lost.
So, we get ready for next year.
But they were still the title favorites coming into the 2022 season, which went wrong for so many reasons, which had little to do with basketball. Due to his reluctance to get vaccinated, Irving wasn't allowed to play during another pandemic season, which led to Harden publicly demanding a trade and getting shipped to Philadelphia mid-season. When Kyrie returned, the Nets had a depleted roster, and Brooklyn got swept in the first round of the playoffs. The writing was already on the wall. And by the end of the 2023 season, both Kyrie and Durant were out of Brooklyn, and the Nets hit rock bottom yet again.
It was a lot of ups and downs, but I loved the grind. Everybody in Brooklyn loved the grind too, so I built a family over there. They're going to always be a part of my journey. We didn't accomplish what we wanted to accomplish as far as winning the championship, just like I told him, but I enjoy the grind. And everybody there, we tried our hardest every day, regardless of what was going on in the media, what was going on with our teammates.
And even though he's usually the first person to criticize super teams, Charles Barkley was once a part of one, and it didn't end well.
I would never join a super team
ever.
In 1996, Barkley joined the Houston Rockets, who already had Hakeem Olajuwon and Clyde Drexler. All three future Hall of Famers had already celebrated their 33rd birthday and were on the back ends of their prime. However, they still had enough juice left for one last hurrah. At least, it looked that way when the Rockets got past the Timberwolves and the Supersonics in the first two rounds of the 1997 playoffs. But then they faced the Utah Jazz in the conference finals, in a tough, physical, and very even series. The series went all the way to Game 7, where Houston had a chance to win, but John Stockton hit a buzzer-beating three that sent the Jazz to the finals.
John Stockton sends the Utah Jazz to the NBA Finals!
In 1998, Charles Barkley got hurt, and the Jazz defeated the Rockets once again. After that season, Drexler retired, and his replacement was the most accomplished sidekick in the league, Scottie Pippen.
We got a nice little nucleus, but we need a star to push us to that next level. You know, a guy like a Scottie Pippen is the perfect guy.
Pip wanted to prove that he could win without Jordan, and he wanted to be the man on a team with Hakeem and Sir Charles. That didn't sit too well with Chuck, who openly beefed with Pippen, derailing the team's chemistry from the start. With Barkley and Olajuwon now past the age of 35, everything needed to go right for Houston to win. But nothing went right, and the Rockets lost in the first round of the playoffs again, thus ending their title hopes.
We were a little bit older. I thought I was joining a super team to some degree, but it just didn't work out.
And in more recent years, a super team was assembled that had a reigning NBA MVP, a perennial all-star who was one of the best defensive wings in the league, plus a generational scorer who had nearly reached 30,000 points in his career. The 2018 OKC Thunder was stacked. And apart from their big three of Russell Westbrook, Paul George, and Carmelo Anthony, they also had a rock-solid center in Steven Adams and excellent wing stoppers in Andre Robertson and Jeremy Grant. Westbrook and George were in their prime and were easily in the top 10 players in the league, while Carmelo was still only 33, 1 year removed from his last All-Star game. But something never clicked with that team. They won only 48 games in the regular season, 2 losses away from missing the playoffs entirely. And when the playoffs started, there was no cohesion on offense, along with no defensive identity, and the Jazz smashed the Thunder in 5 games. After that season, Carmelo was traded to Houston, and in his place came Dennis Schroeder, a lightning-quick defensive point guard, who helped OKC's defense reach the top 5 in the league. With George playing at an MVP level and scoring a career-high 28 points per game, it seemed like OKC had all the pieces for the ultimate checkmate. But then George hurt his shoulder, and after a while he hurt his other shoulder. He didn't want to get surgery before the playoffs, which was admirable, but it didn't serve his team. Even though PG still averaged 28 points per game in their series against Portland, he didn't shoot the ball well. And Westbrook, who had 2 healthy shoulders, shot even worse. And the Blazers knocked them out of the playoffs in 5 games, with this series-ending buzzer beater.
Lillard, long-range three, and it's good! At the buzzer!
After the season, Russ got traded to Houston, and George was traded to the Clippers for Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, which turned out to be a blessing in disguise. OKC is currently the best team in the NBA and is positioned to stay there for years to come thanks to that George trade, who never really delivered for the Clippers. PG came to LA in a package deal with Kawhi Leonard, and together these two were every GM's dream. 2 big mobile defenders who could create and hit shots, and also share the ball. It was supposed to be a perfect pairing, especially because they also came with a well-oiled team with plenty of quality players, namely Pat Beverly, Ivica Zubac, Lou Williams, and Montrezl Harrell, who had won 6th Man of the Year. In 2020, the Clippers had the best roster in the NBA, but what they lacked was chemistry. PG and Kawhi weren't team leaders, and yet they asked for special privileges, which alienated them from the rest of the team. The Clippers played just average for the entire season. But in the second round of the playoffs against the Nuggets, it looked like they had finally found their stride, as they held a 3-1 series lead after 4 games. But then, an abomination. In Game 5, the Clippers had a 12-point lead at the half, only to squander it all and lose the game in the final minutes. In Game 6, LA had a 16-point lead at the half, but they fell apart even more terribly, as Denver outscored them 64-35 in the last 2 quarters, with George and Leonard shooting 6 for 21 from the field.
2 games in a row where they have squandered 16-point leads.
And then, in Game 7, the Clippers again had a halftime lead, but they disappeared when it mattered most, playing with no sense of urgency and looking like they didn't even want to be on the court. PG shot 4 of 16 in the game, while Kawhi was only slightly better, with 6 of 22 shooting. Together, they scored only 24 points with the season on the line. And in the end, Denver convincingly won the game by 15 points.
Someone had to pay for this. This was an epic failure. And when you put two superstars together, you mortgage your future. The results need to be immediate.
After that fiasco, Doc Rivers got fired, and in his place came Tyronn Lue, who immediately brought better energy, better tactical adjustments, and more accountability from his biggest stars. And the Clippers looked great in the 2021 playoffs, getting past Luka and the Mavs and Utah in the second round. But against the Jazz, Kawhi tore his ACL and would miss the conference finals, where the Clippers lost 4-2 to the Suns. To make matters worse, Leonard missed the entire 2022 season too. And in 2023, despite the arrival of Russell Westbrook, both Kawhi and George got hurt during the playoffs, and another season went down the drain.
The Clippers just make me sick.
In 2024, the Clippers also added James Harden, and now they had 4 superstars on their team and were easily the deepest team in the league. But once again, Kawhi couldn't stay healthy for the playoffs, and the Clippers lost in the first round, after which Westbrook and George left the team. And by now, you may be noticing a trend of certain names and teams popping up on this list more than once. Well, buckle up, because next we have Russell Westbrook's nightmare stint with the LA Lakers.
The Lakers are the best team in the West. The reality is, with Russell Westbrook, they're going to wreck the league in the regular season. They're going to be dominant.
After they won the 2020 NBA championship on the back of LeBron and Anthony Davis, the Lakers kept their team mostly intact for 2021, where they lost in the first round of the playoffs. Eager to make a change, the Lakers traded the best perimeter defense in the league for a superstar who played arguably the worst defense in NBA history.
When the Lakers won in 2020, they're the third best defense in the league. Last year, even without LeBron James and Anthony Davis for a lot of the season because both had injuries, they had a top 3 defense all year long. This year, 19th.
Westbrook was never a great defender, despite his otherworldly athleticism and lateral quickness. But with the Lakers, the dude simply didn't care and played below any standard for a player making north of $40 million per season. On defense, he would just jog in transition, ball watch rather than marking his man, and his communicating and positioning were completely off.
This is classic, vintage, careless, out of control Russell Westbrook. No conscience.
Now, if Russ was making it up on the other end, maybe we could shut one eye and let it slide. But that wasn't the case. Less than 30% of Westbrook's threes went in, and his free throws dipped to just 66%. The Lakers had depleted their bench to add Westbrook, who was the second most expensive player in the league, and they demanded him to be a role player. It was never a great fit stylistically either, because both Russ and Bron were at their best with the ball in their hands, surrounded by shooters. Westbrook was lost without the ball, and when you add in injuries to both AD and LeBron, this was a catastrophe waiting to happen.
Now, let's just get this out of the way, please. The Lakers are a national basketball atrocity. Let's just call it what it is.
After a season and a half of complete misery, Russ got traded to the Clippers, while the Lakers managed to regroup and make the conference finals. But that's not all, folks, because the Lakers are suckers for a super team. And in the summer of 2012, they caught the biggest fish on the free agent market, Dwight Howard. Dwight was the best center in the NBA, a defensive and rebounding machine who could change the game with just his presence near the rim. LA also signed a 2-time MVP in Steve Nash, and the 2 superstars joined Kobe, Pau Gasol, and Metta World Peace, forming a 5-star lineup. But the problem was, Nash and Howard both had back issues, and while Dwight lost a good chunk of his explosiveness, the 38-year-old Steve Nash could barely move.
And people just think, oh, Dwight, Kobe, Steve Nash, Pau Gasol, man, they should all be able to play well together. And it just don't always work out like that. Sometimes people just don't fit.
Kobe and Pau were also getting up there in age, and midway through the season, the Lakers were struggling to secure a playoff berth.
I just think philosophically, that relationship was never going to work.
Everybody expected me and Kobe to be like the new Kobe and Shaq. And I'm just coming off injury.
And then Kobe went to work. Bryant single-handedly refused to let the Lakers lose, and they finally started winning games. But Kobe playing 40 minutes per night at the age of 34 wasn't sustainable. On April 12, 2013, with just 2 games remaining in the regular season, Kobe dribbled past Harrison Barnes, and then he heard a pop, and his whole world stopped.
Again, he's struggling.
Still, he got up, walked to the free throw line, and coldly made both, the last 2 baskets of Kobe's prime. that Lakers team fell apart mostly because of injuries and old age. But what about a team that failed when everyone was healthy and still in their prime? Well, that happened to the 2024 Phoenix Suns, who had Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, and Bradley Beal, but still got swept in the first round of the playoffs. And it wasn't even close. Trading Chris Paul for Beal proved to be a major mistake, despite the Suns losing in the 2023 conference semifinals with Paul, KD, and Book. Even though Beal was a great scorer, when you have Booker and Durant already, you need size, energy, and defense, not more offensive firepower, and especially not a player making $50 million a year. Now, the 2025 season is still ongoing, but the Suns are struggling, despite having the most expensive roster in NBA history. And it's more than likely that this team will end up like all the others on this list, another failed super team. Thanks for watching, and if you like this video, we have another one for you right here.